My dear brothers and sisters in Christ Jesus, Book 5 of the Code of Canon Law has this title, The Temporal Goods of the Church. It is true that man does not live by bread alone, but he also needs some bread. In this context, Book 5, right at the beginning, asserts the right of the Church to acquire, to administer, to alienate goods of the Church. In this context, it also emphasizes the primary reasons for which the Church needs money, property, goods. It is for the sake of divine worship, support of the clergy and other ministers, for works of apostolate and charity. Temporal goods have to be acquired, retained, and administered, and even alienated in accordance with the right principles in such a way the Church really bears witness to the person of Christ. They have to remember certain principles in dealing with material things. First of all, those who are entrusted with this responsibility in the Church must have moral and technical competence. That's why the Church requires not only persons who are intelligent and well-versed in financial matters, but also persons who are of impeccable character, who are known for their absolute integrity of life. The Church also insists on participation of a sufficient number of faithful in the administration of goods. They may participate individually and also structurally. For this purpose, the Church has the Diocesan Finance Council at the diocesan level and the Parish Finance Council at the parish level. Sometimes we need to involve some bodies of participation. The Diocesan Finance Council needs to be consulted by the bishop. At times, he also has to consult the College of Consultors and even the Senate in accordance with the law in certain important matters. At other times, the diocesan bishop is required to get the consent of these participatory structures. Only then the Church can bear true witness with regard to the administration of temporal goods. We have in the Code of Canon Law two important provisions. One is the Diocesan Finance Council, which is described in Canon 492 and 93. It is followed by the Diocesan Finance Officer, Economo or Procurator as he is called. This office is described in Canon 494. First of all, in the Old Code, there was what is known as Council of Administration. It was described in Canon 1520. Now, the new code speaks of it in Canon 492 and 493. Regarding its establishment, the code says it is obligatory. in each and every diocese, it must be established. Secondly, with regard to the composition, this council is to have at least 3 members of Christ faithful. They can be clerics, they can be members of institutes of consecrated life, or they can be lay members of Christ faithful. What is their qualification? As I already said, they ought to be really well versed in financial matters. Secondly, they must be knowledgeable about civil law. And thirdly, and more importantly, they should be known for their integrity. They should not be persons of bad repute who can mishandle money. Who appoints them? The law says the diocesan bishop freely appoints the members of the Diocesan Finance Council. Of course, the diocesan bishop is not omniscient, all-knowing. He may have to consult the College of Consultors or some other important responsible persons in the curia to choose the right persons, though finally it is his decision. What is the term of their office? The law itself says that they are appointed for a 5-year term. There is no restriction on the renewal of their term because such an important responsibility may need continuity. In a given circumstance, whether it be members of the Diocesan Finance Council or the Diocesan Finance Officer can be appointed repeatedly for a 5-year term if it would do good to the diocese in the judgment of the diocesan bishop. Coming to the functions of the Diocesan Finance Council. The Diocesan Finance Council has a directive role. In fact, it determines, in accordance with the mind of the bishop and the suggestions of the bishop, the policy of the diocese concerning finance and its expenditure. We can broadly divide these functions into 2 areas. In certain matters, the Diocesan Finance Council or committee has to be consulted. For instance, before appointing the Diocesan Finance Officer, the bishop is asked to consult this participatory body. Likewise, if he wants to remove the finance officer before the expiry of the term, then also he needs to get their consultation. When we speak of consultation, if he omits the consultation altogether, the act will be juridically invalid. But he is not obliged to abide by the opinion expressed. It is finally his decision. The same participatory structure, that is the Diocesan Finance Council, needs to be consulted before the bishop intends to impose a tax, whether it be ordinary or extraordinary, in accordance with Canon 1263. The Diocesan Finance Committee is to be consulted also before the bishop decides that in his diocese for parishes and other institutions, so much amount is not ordinary administration. It will amount to extraordinary administration in accordance with Canon 1281. Sometimes there may be pious foundations in the diocese. People may entrust the bishop with a certain amount of money or property for a particular purpose. With regard to investing them, the bishop needs to consult the finance committee. Likewise, sometimes the obligations arising from the pious foundations may have to be reduced, and even mass offerings may have to be reduced in accordance with the changing circumstances. The diocesan bishop should not do it on his own before getting the opinion of the diocesan finance council. There are a second category of actions in which the diocesan finance committee is involved. That is, matters in which the bishop needs to get the consent of this council. Suppose there are 5 members, the majority, that is, at least 3 must give the green signal for the bishop to act. What are these? The code especially mentions in Canon 1277 acts of extraordinary administration. When it is below the amount established for the region by the Episcopal Conference, the consent of the finance committee is sufficient. When it is above the maximum amount, there is also additional permission required from the Holy See. Likewise, whenever there is alienation of properties, then also the Holy See's permission is needed if it is above the maximum amount. If it is below the maximum amount, the consent of the Diocesan Finance Committee is required. Even before obtaining the permission of the Holy See, even for such matters, prior consent of the Diocesan Finance Committee also is required. The Diocesan Finance Committee has an important responsibility of examining the annual diocesan account submitted by the Diocesan Finance Officer. Not only that, it also has to examine each and every annual account submitted by all the public juridical persons subject to the authority of the diocesan bishop, that is, the accounts submitted by parishes and institutions in the diocese. In this way, it collaborates with the bishop in the overall administration of temporal goods in the diocese. In addition, where the diocesan finance officer is elected as diocesan administrator, the finance committee has the right to elect an interim diocesan finance officer. In this way, the diocesan finance committee fulfills a number of important functions. No other body or individual can fulfill its functions. In this context, we should also consider the new provision with regard to finance and its administration in the form of the diocesan finance officer or the procurator or the economo as he is called. The office is described in Canon 494. He is appointed by the diocesan bishop for a 5-year term. The person can be a lay person, man or woman, cleric, or even a religious. Of course, he or she should have the necessary qualification, expertise in financial matters, and persons of outstanding integrity only can be appointed for this purpose. The exclusion of the close relatives of the bishop up to 4th degree consanguinity and affinity is already mentioned in Canon 492. Though it is not mentioned in Canon 494 with regard to the finance officer, we can infer that it is understood. The finance officer can also be appointed for further terms of 5 years. There is no restriction in the Code of Canon Law. In certain instances, the change of office may do good to the diocese, but if the bishop wants, the finance officer can be appointed for a longer period. The finance officer administers the goods of the diocese in accordance with the plan proposed, budget approved by the Diocesan Finance Council and the diocesan bishop. He makes payments as directed by the bishop. In addition, the diocesan finance officer must always have in mind the duties and responsibilities mentioned for all administrators of temporal goods in Canons 1281 to 89. The diocesan bishop can also entrust to him other tasks concerning temporal goods in the diocese as described in Canon 1278. Dear friends, there may be in some cases some juridical persons, private or public, in the diocese without their own administrator. It is for the diocesan bishop to see to it that they are also properly administered, and in this task, the diocesan finance officer will surely assist him. The diocesan bishop also has the duty of vigilance over all the diocesan property within the diocese. This he cannot accomplish by himself. It is for the diocesan finance officer to assist him in ensuring that no property of the church is lost because of carelessness or because of negligence or maladministration. This is described in Canon 1276. The recent directory on the pastoral ministry of the bishops, Apostolorum Successoris, clearly speaks about the Diocesan Finance Council in Numbers 188 to 190 with regard to the duty of the bishop, and the council proper is treated in 192. It is good to take note of all this and see to it that there is transparency, accountability, integrity in the administration of the goods of the church.